This is important. People who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up, can you fill in the blanks? What do you think happens? Write your guess in the comments. Julia had no idea how it started. One day everything was fine, normal even. She worked, texted friends, scrolled social media before bed. It was mindless and comforting, the kind of habit you don't think about because everyone does it. But habits have a way of mutating when you're not paying attention. One night, Julia lay in bed with her phone, its faint glow painting her face in pale blue light. She wasn't even looking at anything important. A cooking video, a meme, another endless scroll of strangers' lives. And then it happened. The video that stopped her cold. A crowded subway car, ordinary enough, but there in the background, blurred but unmistakable. It was her. She could see herself sitting, wearing the coat she always wore to work, her earbuds tucked in as she stared at her own phone. She replayed the clip twice, 3 times, searching for an explanation. She hadn't filmed herself, and no one she knew had been on that train. The logical part of her brain offered excuses. Maybe it was a coincidence, someone who just looked like her. But the pit in her stomach told her otherwise. The moment passed and Julia swiped again, hoping to distract herself, but sleep wouldn't come. For days, she tried to forget. She told herself it didn't matter, but the next time she opened her phone late at night, her feed had changed. There were photos of places she hadn't been to in years, her old high school, a childhood park, even the house she grew up in, long sold to strangers. At first, she laughed nervously. Maybe the algorithm had figured her out, pieced together scraps of her digital history. It was eerie, sure, but explainable, wasn't it? But when a video appeared, a blurry clip of her as a child, running barefoot across her grandparents' yard, she felt the first crack in her reality. That tape didn't exist. It couldn't. Her grandparents had never filmed her, and she hadn't been to that house since they passed. She watched, wide-eyed, as the comments rolled in beneath the video. One in particular made her blood run cold. "We've missed you, Julia. Come back soon." She slammed her phone down, her chest heaving. "It's just a glitch," she whispered to herself in the darkness. But the darkness didn't answer back. The next few weeks blurred together. Julia stopped talking about what was happening. The one friend she mentioned it to had laughed it off, chalking it up to paranoia or too much screen time. "You're just overthinking," they said, scrolling their own phone as they spoke. But Julia couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The longer she spent on her phone, the more her world began to shift. Conversations at work became harder to follow, as if people were speaking through a layer of static. Faces blurred at the edges, and her memories began to fade. Small things at first. What she had eaten the night before, the name of a childhood pet. But the gaps grew larger. Every night she returned to her phone, unable to resist. It wasn't just a habit anymore. It was an obsession. One evening, while scrolling through her notifications, she noticed a live stream pop up. It wasn't from anyone she followed, but it was titled, "Look Outside." Her breath hitched. The stream showed a darkened street, one that looked eerily familiar. She recognized the cracked sidewalk, the flickering streetlight. It was her street. Her phone buzzed violently in her hand, the vibration almost painful. She stared at the screen as the camera panned up slowly, focusing on her own window. Panic clawed at her throat as she jumped from the bed and rushed to the window, her heart pounding in her chest. Outside, the street was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the streetlight. She turned back to her phone, but the live stream was gone, replaced by an ad for noise-canceling headphones. Her hands shook as she threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud but didn't break. Instead, it landed face up on the floor, the screen dimming to black. That night she dreamed of nothing but static. The next day, Julia didn't go to work. She called in sick, though she wasn't sick, at least not physically. She couldn't explain it, but something had shifted inside her. The world felt thinner, as if she could push through it with enough force. She tried to avoid her phone, leaving it on the dresser, but the compulsion was unbearable. By the afternoon, she gave in, picking it up and swiping through notifications. That's when she saw the video. It was short, just a few seconds long, but it was enough. The video showed her sitting on her bed, staring blankly at her phone exactly as she was now. The timestamp read, "Live." Her breath caught as the comments began pouring in. "She's almost ready. Keep swiping, Julia. We're waiting for you." She tried to shut the phone off, but the screen wouldn't respond. Her reflection stared back at her, distorted and wrong. The faint outline of something moved behind her reflection, just out of focus. She turned sharply, but her room was empty. That night was the last anyone saw of Julia. Her landlord found her apartment untouched, her belongings exactly where she had left them, except for her phone, which lay on the bed with the screen still glowing faintly. When her friends called, the line rang endlessly before going to voicemail. Weeks later, a new account appeared on TikTok. It posted videos of Julia's old life, her favorite cafes, the park where she used to walk, even her childhood home. The comments were filled with speculation, fans obsessed with solving the mystery of her disappearance. But some commenters noticed something else. The account's followers, the ones who seemed most engaged, had started disappearing too. If you're reading this, think about how much time you spend swiping. Think about what you're ignoring, what you're losing, what might be watching you in the reflection of your screen. Because people who swipe on their iPhones all day always end up, well, you decide. Fill in the blank. Maybe it's already happening to you.